Hi there, Christian Henson from Spitfire Audio here. Totally honoured to be walking you through Hammers, brainchild of renowned composer Charlie Clouser of the Saw franchise, Wayward Pines, Resident Evil, but also former member of the Nine Inch Nails. Right, how would I describe this library? Transcendent. This library lifts our craft up an echelon and takes us onto a new chapter. Cinematic drums from 2021 and beyond are going to sound like this. I'm just going to show you what I can do with a bass drum. Simple loop. Complexify. Now I'm going to take this MIDI and put it into a warped version of the kick. And I've got some additional warps assigned to these levers. And that's just the bass drum. As a drum programmer, having this ability to sculpt sound with rhythm is just absolutely scintillating. But there's a lot of sounds in this library. Over 1,000 different individual sounds, over 400 kind of fresh raw loops and 400 warped loops with all of those different kind of warping and shaping capabilities. So when you open it up, you'll see the default is an ensembles patch, which is basically high up here, medium down here. It just gives you a taste of all of the instruments all the way down to the bass drum. Just insane. And then you have the separate drums, bass drums, surdos, toms, rototoms, frame drums, snare drums, darbukas and scrap. So as I mentioned before, over 1,000 different sounds, but deeply sampled as well. So 6 dynamic layers, 9 round robins. And you'll see that then you have loops that match those different categories and then warps. Now, it would be really easy to get into the weeds and play you through all of the different individual hits, but that's not the way this library really operates. It's all about incorporating the loops, warps and hits together. So I'm going to work kind of middle out and start with the raw loops. This partnership really takes Charlie's raw industrial sensibilities and couples them with the elegance of a Spitfire Audio GUI, and there's all sorts of really exciting new features to show you. But let's just start with some of these loops and introduce you to the space that is this incredible glass, steel and concrete room that is 23 feet high and gives you a very tight and focused sound, but a brash and man-made one. Let's start with the mixes. Now, whilst I really look forward to rolling my sleeves up as a drum programmer and an engineer, what this also offers is speed of use and ease of use, particularly if engineering may be your Achilles heel. And I do detect with some composers there's possibly a slight weakness in how to certainly engineer drums. Charlie's mixes are just incredible, and they start with the fairly gentle, curated and processed mix 1. And you'll hear immediately that these loops are, well, what I refer to as more cellular phrases. They're part of a bigger picture. So it's not a pseudo ensemble just going hell for leather. It's all about you getting these cellular ingredients and building your own patterns for them. So you'll hear that the lower drums are very much more about accents, loud, and then kind of ticking away. And as you move up the registers, they get busier and busier and more frantic. You'll also hear that that sounded quite reverberant. Hammers ships with a personally curated selection of IRs from Charlie Clouser, including stuff like the Stone Room, medium percussion, ambient, dark chambers, drum chambers, all specially curated for drums. Now, I'll get onto those in a minute, but let's just pull the reverb down to nothing and just have a listen to these mixes raw. just such a great sounding room. Mix 2 is a little bit more processed, a bit more compressed through Charlie's extraordinary selection of outboard and modular gear. Slightly more ambient. And then mix 3 is him really crushing it. And you'll hear there that the dynamics are kind of reduced in the sense that you can hear the momentum a little bit more. Let's have a listen to the close mics. And the overheads, a little bit further away from the instrument. Now the room mics. And then we've got a close mic setting pitched, which is Charlie's signature sound. Got a real subbiness. Great stuff. And then the same with the overheads. It's great. It's got that real hybrid sound to it. Not one for the purists, but this library certainly isn't. Like to make a little mix of those there. Absolutely stupendous. And then we've also got this sub-feed, which is great for your LFE channel if you're working in surround. So microphone mixes are by and large the same for every drum, but we do have some speciality mics depending on the drum. So you'll see the bass drum here. Let's listen to the mix. It's just such a phenomenal sound. So let's just quickly listen to the close mic on this. And without the reverb. And we've also got a close rear mic for this particular drum. With reverb. Got our toms here. And what's very unique about this library is none of the drums have any wood in, any animal skin or rope. These are all Vistalite and stainless steel and plastic heads that give it that real kind of man-made industrial feel. Rotor toms. I'd love to hear the pitched versions of those. And then we have a frame drum, and you'll see here we have the addition of a crush mic. So that's what the mix sounds like. Let's hear what the crush mic sounds like. And then the pitched version of that. As a drum programmer, I've always preferred using stuff like brushed toms and brushed frame drums as a shaker as opposed to jazzy shaker. I find they're much more suited to drama. We've got some darbukas. These are great as little tickies. And then we've got our scrap, which is bits of metal that Charlie has picked up over the years. Okay, for fits and giggles, I just love to hear what they sound like all together. So the raw loops we're listening to are currently at 90 BPM, and these have been curated for the spirit of that tempo, if you will. So stalking, mysterious music. And you'll hear a change in character as we go up through the tempi. Let's go to 110. More purposeful, 130. Full-on action to pandemonium at 150. So a collection of patterns that aren't just sped up and slowed down for the different tempos, but curated to fit in the spirit of those tempos. And 70 is for, well, it's for marauding, isn't it? Something that will immediately jump out at you when you pick up a copy of Hammers is the consistency between the loops and the warp loops and the single hits. There's basically a cohesiveness where you don't feel that the loops are something separate from the hits and the warps are something different all unto themselves. They're all meant to be integrated. And there's all sorts of kind of logic to the way things are organised to make your job easier. So Charlie refers to these as bricks, which are basically 6 notes groups clustered together with a kind of an internal logic. So you have loop 1, 2, and these are basically different variations on similar kind of patterns. And then as we move up, say here, gets a bit busier. But what's also great, and something I'm sure many of you have experienced when working with loops, is they all have loop enders. Also further down the keyboard, you'll find there are reverse versions, which just basically means it really speeds up that whole process of doing reverse transitions, etc., etc. So a huge variety of different loops, and what's particularly special about this library is the loops are very much curated for the BPM, and there's quite an extraordinary feature in this library that not only does it follow tempo if you have this activated, so sync to tempo on, not only does it follow your tempo, but actually when you go into a different kind of tempo category, i.e. from 90 to 110, it'll actually automatically toggle to the loops that have been curated at 110. So you'll see here I've got a gliding tempo going up to 110 and then back down again. And you'll hear it'll play the entire loop and follow the tempo, and it'll toggle to this next tempo in time for it to be triggered. Stay with the surdos. Speeding up now. And this also protects the purity of the sound, so you're not getting loads of artifacts if you don't want to when you're transitioning into these more extreme tempos away from where the root tempo lies. Let's listen to the rototoms doing the same thing. Clever stuff. Obviously, you can change the various stretch modes and you can switch off the sync to tempo feature. And there's also a fantastic retro pitch way of syncing to tempo, which just literally pitch shifts it up and down. So again, you're not getting all of those artifacts, and it creates some really interesting effects. Just check this out. But for those subtle shifts in tempo, that would actually be my preferred route. Also, lots of other functions there, which I'll get to when we go to the single hits. So as the loops match the hits, also so do the warps. So theoretically, what we'll be able to do is discover the warped version of each of these drums. So here you had the raw version. And here's the warped version. So there's a relatability there, and we've got, all in all, 12 different warps. So let's have a listen through some of those. I mean, this is really insane stuff that Charlie's doing with his amazing array of outboard and modular gear. And Charlie told me what he was really conscious of was making low drums also sound high and high drums sound low. tastefully bit crushed there. Very crunchy. And finally 12. It's insane. Let's have a listen to what he's done with some of the scrap. These types of cells that you can add to your compositions are such brilliant motivators for your cues. And by blending them, you can curate and pimp these to really suit your tastes. So what I'm going to quickly do is swap all of these out for their warps and then have a listen to what madness we can create there. So I'm just using exactly the same MIDI, and I'm just going to go through and switch out for their warped counterparts. Right, so let's have a listen to this. I mean, this is just great for building up those very contemporary sounding action sequences, but also great as tension beds for police procedurals. And for me, the ability to really sculpt to picture in real time using the different warps is a really special feature. And particularly if you're doing additive music in computer games, Charlie's basically handed you your stems on a plate for different levels of intensity in gameplay. So that's 800 plus loops, the building blocks from which you can construct rhythm patterns that are absolutely true and unique to you. And a way of pimping them further, or indeed starting from scratch, is to use the individual hits. And there's some amazing features to take you through. So the hits, it's a massive number of dynamic layers, I think 6 and up to 9 round robins. So really incredibly dynamic, and we've got all sorts of different dynamic and velocity settings here to suit your keyboard. We've also got flams, which really give a sense of scale, roughs, which are awesome, and rolls, which you control via your modulation wheel. And also, if you switch on this function, you get an end hit when you take the key off. That's how they're organised on ensembles. But when you switch to the individual hits, so let's go to bass drums, you'll see that basically it's organised differently. And this, again, is organised in bricks. So it's basically hit, 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 rough, flam, and roll. And then the same again. Hit, 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 rough, flam, roll, for the slightly different kick drums. And the reason for this is, well, you can program it like this. Actually quite difficult to do that, or on 2 keys. But a technique Charlie adopts is this. But you can also go 2-handed, so there's an octave match. And then again here. So that'll be the same whether you're solo damped or solo open. Just the bottom end on that is just something incredible. Or indeed the 4-player. There's also a really intuitive voice choking feature. So, for example, this rough, independent of whatever tempo you're working at, you can actually shorten that by just hitting a straight hit. So we'll make this shorter. And that feature can be switched on and off there. Let's check out the 4 players. And this is where the dynamics of what you program is really vital. So for me, this is all about accents. Now, if you're wanting to really bring those lower dynamics up, we have a bunch of features here. So let's just try normalize. And what that does is, as you can see by the icon there, is it flattens the dynamics. So this is as it comes out of the box. If I bring this all the way up, you'll hear the actual amplitude is squashed. But you may have also noticed a few other little tricks here. We've got an LPF. So normalize is almost like MIDI compression. It manages the dynamics. Another way of doing that is with actual compression. So compared to, just makes it a little bit snappier. Personally, I wouldn't use too much compression on individual instruments and prefer to compress the whole percussion bus. But this is certainly a useful tool for making things just that little bit snappier. But for any of you who have sculpted rhythm patterns, you know that for transitions and stuff like that, reversing stuff is a really cool and easy way to get through an awkward cut. And Charlie's made it even easier. No longer are we having to print audio and then reverse and then kind of match it up. You simply use the reverse function, which is awesome because it's not just an on and an off, it is a mount. So this will actually sync to your tempo from a quick reverse to a long one. And what I'm particularly excited about is the prospect of being able to do that. Let's move along to the toms. We've got our solo, got our 2-player, our 4-player, and some rollers, and also brushes. I think that would be great with that normalize feature up there. And it might be fun just to check out these different reverbs. Let's try those in a stone room. Much more of a kind of gated sound. And our drum chamber. Let's turn this right up. It's just beautifully curated stuff. Medium perk. And then ambient. And again, rotor toms feature solo, 2-player, amazing, and 4-player. Really very distinctive. And it's just great with this huge selection of dynamic layers. Brushes. Let's again put this about halfway up. Charlie sees this as a bit of a bonus instrument. He just wanted to put a snare in because it sounded so bloody good in that room. I don't know if I'll be using it much, but the snare off is also quite interesting. Kind of almost gives you an alternate tom-tom. A lot of selections with the darbukas. The center, the edge. And again, you can layer all of these up, center, edge, and high. And then 2-player. With really rich drums underneath, really are your kind of your go-to for epic kind of action material. So moving all the way from the bottom to the top to our scrap, and we have a low pipe, high pipe, an iron, to miscellaneous. So for those of you who are nervous about percussion programming, you don't feel it's your wheelhouse, you're more into orchestral, I think this is an instantaneous set of tools and a great education using these loops is you can hear how different rhythm types are suited to different pitches and different instruments. It really helps you to understand how these loops are constructed by allowing you to construct them from cells yourself and then moving into the single hits to create intricate patterns of your own. For me, the ability to crossfade between the different warps unbuckles the straitjacket of working with loops. For me, sampling isn't about capturing other people's music, and it's not just about capturing individual samples, it's about capturing the essence of performance, and that's what Charlie has done here. So for people working on TV, thrillers, procedural work, this I think is an absolute must-have. For contemporary dramas and for computer games, particularly additive forms, this is going to be a must-go. But where Charlie, the Spitfire team, and myself are very interested to see it being used is enhancing the the work of the producers amongst you making rock, pop, EDM. And for old salty sea drum programmer dogs like me, it enables us to take sonically cinematic percussion into 2021 and beyond, and to be able to craft really intricate and clever rhythm patterns. The functionality that you saw in the hits, that is universal across the loops, with exception to the normalize function. So you can apply the reverse function to the loops and the warps as well. So there's an ocean of possibility here, and I really look forward to watching you surfing in it. Thanks so much to Charlie Clouser for just... When you use it, you just go, this is someone who has done this for decades and has come up with a set of tools that finally answers our calls. So thank you, Charlie. If we could give one up of those for him, that would be much appreciated. Do subscribe if you haven't done. There's loads of films coming up, and linked below is all sorts of information about hammers and other videos that we've made, demos, the product page, etc., etc. Ding that bell if you want to be notified the next time we put a film up, and thanks for watching to the end. See you next time.